Assalamu alaikum. I'm Mostafa, and I am, as Thomas said, from National Union of Students. I am the International Student Officer there, representing the almost 500,000 international students that we have in the United Kingdom. I'm an international student myself in the United Kingdom. The questions that you ask are very, very good questions, and I don't think even the student movement as a whole has concrete responses to do we want to somehow reverse the referendum, or if we want to do that, what the strategy is. I think it's still a lot of people are in the shock because of the results, so I think we have to take it step by step and formulate our response as we go along. But just to build on some of the things that were just said about the situation in the UK, I think it's right to say that the centre of politics, because of the referendum, are now significantly shifted to the right, and the process had started previously by from the beginning of the coalition government in 2010. The things that were probably previously seen as quite extreme in the public discourse became extremely acceptable and became part of public life and public debate and discourse over the past 5-6 years, and it reached its height at the time of the referendum, where you might have seen that when Nigel Farage showed a poster that the UKIP party had designed for the referendum, and it showed loads of migrants, mainly from the Middle East and from the global south, on a long road, which I don't know where it was taken somewhere in Europe, and it showed, it said they're coming here, they're coming for us, extremely similar to the propaganda of the Nazis at the time that they were in power. A very, very dangerous rhetoric. Even the people in the Conservative Party were saying this is just taking it too far, but unfortunately they still went ahead with it. They still, you know, it wasn't, unfortunately the atmosphere was in a way that even that wasn't seen as too much or too far. And the backlash of that we're seeing now with the Leave campaign winning the vote, it seems to be a lot of people's actions, the extreme right, as you mentioned, the actions has become legitimized. On the streets, people get attacked for looking different, for speaking a different language, for having a different religion, routinely, unfortunately now. It's increasing, and you know, the European referendum, even if we say it was based on immigration, obviously it was mainly based on European immigration, not immigration from other parts of the world to the UK. But we now see black people, South Asian people being attacked on the street, saying, "Go back where you come from. We voted Leave, we want you out." Which is, you know, it's quite clear that the referendum wasn't purely about European immigration. The refugee crisis in the Middle East had a significant impact on the outcome of that, because a lot of people's analogy was like, these people are now coming to EU, in a few years' time they're going to be EU nationals, EU citizens, and then they can easily come to the UK, and somehow saw that as a threat to the fabric of British society, as they put it. But a lot of the anger, as was just rightly said, is because of the financial stress and pressure that a lot of the population is under. So only a couple of days ago, a figure was announced, which I think is quite indicative of the geographic economic distribution that we have seen in the UK for the past few years. It showed that in London, we have 25 times spent on publicly spent infrastructure than we do in the northeast of England. And it's interesting to see that the parts that have the lowest spend in public infrastructure are the ones that are most likely to vote Leave, because they see this problem as coming from the EU, where, as it was rightly said, it was a decision made by the UK government. I think that's something to be really aware of when we're organising across Europe, to notice that obviously economic pressure on the population directly links to the rise of xenophobia and racism, and we try to address that in our anti-racist activities. Another thing that I just wanted to say was, again, to build on the fact that the Conservatives are indeed implementing UKIP policy. So in a way, UKIP has never won a seat, well, actually has won one seat in the UK Parliament of one of the Conservative MP. They quit and they ran again as a UKIP candidate and they won, so they have one member in Parliament. But in reality, by winning this vote to leave, they have pretty much achieved all their policy proposals. Now we have the government talking about a school system which was advocated only by UKIP 2 years ago, but now is being implemented across the country by a Conservative government, and many other policies which were purely UKIP policies before, but now has become government policies by not even winning more than one seat. So that's another danger, that by legitimising the far right, we see their policies coming into more mainstream parties and becoming the norm. Another thing to be aware of. But what our response is and what we're doing as the National Union of Students in the country, we, our newly elected president, which is the first person of colour that has been elected as the president of the National Union of Students in its 90 plus years history, has set 8. Her name is Malia Bouatia. Some of you might know her. She comes to France quite often and takes part in the National Union of Students in France as well. She has set out 8 priorities, which 2 of them directly links to the rise of anti-racism. So one is to fight racism and fascism on our campuses in our universities, and the other one is to be more active in the migrants' rights movement in the UK. Because we see that more and more rights of migrants, including our members, international students, has been taken away. Only recently, we have had about 50,000 international students in the UK being targeted by the Home Office. Over 1,500 of them have been detained and deported purely because they're accused of cheating in an English language test, an accusation that they can't even defend themselves against. They're not even given the right to go to court and defend themselves. And that is obviously in the backdrop of the rise of racism and the fact that they just want to get rid of anyone that doesn't look like the indigenous English person, unfortunately. But yeah, so we have set a big demonstration on November the 19th, which we're building towards, we've been building over the past few months. It's a joint demonstration in central London with UCU, which is the main trade union representing academic staff across the UK. And we're marching to demand these 8 things, which 2 of them, as I said, directly relate to fighting racism, fascism, and defending migrants' rights. So that's in the immediate future, that's what we're doing. And we're trying to also put pressure on the government that the transition to leave the UK would be a smooth one, would be one that at least as many rights that Europe has brought to the UK as we can, save them and protect them, mainly migrants' rights, human rights, and employment rights, which probably more than anyone else affects the migrant communities across the UK.